I'm asking the ICC to hurry up, and if possible, they can come here and start the investigation tomorrow. This issue has been left hanging for so many years. Matagal man, baka mamatay na ako, hindi na nila ako maimbestiga. So I'm asking the ICC through you na pagpunta na sila dito bukas, umpisahan na nila ang investigation. And if I am found guilty, I will go to prison and rot there for some time.
The plane carrying former President Rodrigo Duterte took off at 11:03 p.m. this evening and exited Philippine airspace. The plane is en route to The Hague in the Netherlands, allowing the former president to face charges of crimes against humanity in relation to his bloody war on drugs. The former president was earlier placed in government custody at Villamor Air Base after his common law wife, Hanilet Abansenya, and members of his entourage arrived at 9:20 this morning from Hong Kong on Cathay Pacific flight number CX-907. Mr. Duterte was arrested in compliance with our commitments to Interpol. Hours before his arrival, Interpol Manila received an official copy of the ICC warrant. This prompted the Prosecutor General of the Department of Justice to serve the warrant.
After flying home from his weekend trip in Hong Kong, former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was arrested and served an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, where he faces complaints of accusing him for crimes against humanity. Her daughter Veronica posted pictures of the former president while calling the arrest was illegal. Let us take a look of the legality surrounding the events happened last March 11 from the viewpoint of an international law book author and College of Law Dean.
Now, when we talk about the arrest, dalawa pong viewpoint din yan. What do we mean by legality of the arrest from the viewpoint of international law or from the viewpoint of domestic law? Kasi po that, for example, we can, if for example the legality of the arrest is challenged before the Supreme Court, and even in the eventuality or assuming that the Supreme Court will declare it unconstitutional, that does not technically affect the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court once na-surrender na po si former President Duterte sa jurisdiction ng International Criminal Court. So yung Supreme Court po natin, hindi naman po pwede na that they will order the International Criminal Court to return or to surrender back Duterte to the jurisdiction of the Philippines. So hindi rin po pwede yun. So kasi po iba yung jurisdiction ng domestic courts natin, including the Supreme Court. Iba rin po yung jurisdiction ng ating mga international courts like the International Criminal Court. We must understand po na there was a time that the Philippines was a party to the International Criminal Court. So we were a member, we are a state party to the Rome Statute. So nung time po na state party tayo sa Rome Statute and before our withdrawal from the Rome Statute in 2019, nagka-jurisdiction po yung International Criminal Court over crimes that were allegedly committed during that period of time. So once na-acquire na po yung jurisdiction over the subject matter of those crimes, so that jurisdiction will continue and that cannot be prejudiced by the eventual withdrawal of the state. Kasi po yung hindi naman po fair yun na siyempre once you know na may kaso na ipa-file sa'yo and then bigla ka lang mag-withdraw to deprive the International Criminal Court of jurisdiction. So fair lang po yun na once it acquires jurisdiction over a particular crime or over certain crimes that were allegedly committed during the time na member po tayo, the court will continue to have jurisdiction and the subsequent withdrawal of the state will not prejudice the jurisdiction of the court. Basically po yung kasong na charge sa kanya is the crime against humanity of murder. which is covered by the Rome Statute, Article 7 po ng Rome Statute yon. And we must understand po na this is different from the ordinary murder that we understand under our criminal law sa domestic law po natin. Sa domestic law po, it's simply the killing of a person under, with certain qualifying circumstance. For example, kung may treachery, may premeditation, so that will become murder. Ang murder naman po, as a crime against humanity, iba naman po yun. It's a different level of murder because may contextual element po na requirement yun. It's not, aside from the act of killing lang, yung contextual element po is that it must be committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against a civilian population. So that's the challenge that on the part of the prosecution, they need to establish na yung war on drugs was committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against a civilian population. So yung burden of proof po nun nasa prosecution. So if even if you can establish the commission of murders, if you cannot establish na connected yon to a widespread and systematic attack against a civilian population, then it will not satisfy the requirement for the charges of crimes against humanity. Well, as soon as he is surrendered to the International Criminal Court, then the International Criminal Court will acquire yung tinatawag nating jurisdiction ratione personae or jurisdiction over his person. So, yung jurisdiction ratione personae or over the person of the accused, that can be acquired in two ways, either mag-surrender sa voluntarily or if the warrant of arrest is enforced against him. So, in this particular case, so apparently, so there was a warrant and then it was enforced by the Philippine government and then he was surrendered, and that will be sufficient for the International Criminal Court. Based on what I've seen sa mga interview niya and sa statements niya, apparently what he was citing was the obligation as a member of the Interpol. So, hindi ko po talaga na-check yon, pero normally, basta may Interpol po na request and being a member state, being a party to the Interpol, so normally po is also part of our obligation. Kasi po, ganun din po yan eh. It's based on reciprocity. Kung tayo naman po may kailangan na ipa-arrest, for example, somebody who is an outlaw or is let's say required to be extradited to the Philippines, so we might also need the assistance of the Interpol. Lahat ng moves po natin may implication po sa diplomatic, economic, trade relations po natin with other states, especially with the member states of the International Criminal Court. So kaya po yun isang implication po yun. For example, if there is a warrant and then technically po, because we are no longer a member of the International Criminal Court, technically po may discretion si President Bongbong Marcos not to implement the warrant. So kasi po wala na tayong obligation as a state party. Although may opinion din po na on the other hand they're also saying na it remains as part of our cooperation agreement because the crimes were allegedly committed at the time na may jurisdiction yung International Criminal Court. Pero ito po may mga legal contention po pros and cons yan. Ultimately they will have to be decided by the International Criminal Court, so we will see kung ano po yung magiging final na decision. Technically kasi po yung ano nun, especially when citizen of the Philippines yung concerned doon, normally ano po yan it's a matter of the conduct of foreign relations So ultimately discretion po yan ng president on how to decide on the matter. Technically wala po basta na-surrender niya na po, the court will now acquire jurisdiction. So everything will now be in the hands of the International Criminal Court, especially that they already have the jurisdiction over the person of the former President Duterte. Well, depende po yun on how you look at it. Perhaps lawyers of President Digong can see some loopholes into the matter. Pero sa international law naman po kasi iba naman po yung kasi sa international law po may tinatawag tayo na principle na mali captus bene detentus. So sinasabi po noon, mali captus bene detentus, you may have been wrongfully captured but you are still wrongfully detained. So yung irregularity with respect to the arrest of the person and detention of the person would not necessarily affect or impact or invalidate the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. May mga previous cases na po yun na kinwestiyon yung the mode and the way they were arrested and turned over to the International Criminal Court. Pero yung decision po ng International Criminal Court is that ganun po, mali captus bene detentus. Basta you cannot show a grave and serious violation of your human rights in the way you were arrested and presented to the court. Normally, the court will insist that it has jurisdiction. May mga example po tayo noon. May isang accused po na who was arrested in the former Yugoslavia, and then sinakay po siya sa trunk ng sasakyan, and then nag-drive po sila until they cross border on a friendly state. So for several hours po yung accused po nasa inside the trunk of a car. So he raised a challenge on the legality of his arrest. Sabi niya his human rights were violated kasi po in the way he was brought to the court. Sabi po ng International Criminal Court, well, there may have been violations of your human rights. However, these violations were not serious and they were not intentional, and they were only parang intended lang po yun kasi they were on a parang dangerous territory. So pwede po sila ma-intercept kung makikita nila na yung arrested person dala nila. And that's why yung mga agents po, they placed the suspect or the accused inside the trunk of the car. So sabi po ng Supreme Court, ng International Criminal Court, that is not a serious violation of human rights.